BSN's Motoring 95 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas. For brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service, trust your car to Midas.
It doesn't get much prettier than this, and this is Cape Breton. You know, the summer of '94 will be one to remember in the Maritimes as the tourists flocked here in record numbers, and it's not hard to understand why. It's simply beautiful. But we're here because Chrysler Canada has selected this spot to introduce yet another new car. And later on, Graham Fletcher will test drive the 1995 Cirrus, and we'll also discover that Chrysler has made some automotive history. But first, we're going to head out onto the busy highway. And if you happen to be one of those drivers that gets just a little nervous when you see one of those large tractor trailers in your rearview mirror, well, you have good reason to be.
Today we're doing a safety inspection blitz on heavy vehicles in the Toronto area. A big city like Toronto, there's no inspection scales right in the city. So what we've done is teamed up with the City of Toronto Police and the Ministry of Transport, and we've set up a temporary inspection location, and the police officers are going out into the area highways and city streets, and they're looking for defective trucks. They're bringing them in here, we're weighing them, inspecting them, and we're finding almost everything we're pulling in is unsafe or overloaded or both. The people doing the inspections are from the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. They're vehicle inspectors, and their job, they're almost like mechanics, and their job is to check the trucks according to the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, which is a set of criteria that's been agreed upon by the trucking industry and government.
The economy's been bad the last few years. I think we've started to give, or we have been giving, far too many breaks to some of these truck drivers and trucking companies. And I think the out of service percentage is staying at the same, so we're going to have to start cracking down maybe a little harder.
What's scary is that a truck in bad shape is twice as likely as a good truck to get involved in an accident. And in that trucks are so much bigger than cars, the size and weight, if they get in an accident, it's going to be a bad one.
They're dangerous, they're big, and when we see something that's like brakes, for example, when they're out, yes, it's scary. You know, and I have a little girl, I'm driving the roads too, so it's spooky, you know, dealing with big equipment like this. So.
One of the trucks I pulled in today was driving down Highway 400. It was loaded with hanging beef. I pulled him in, and as soon as I started checking the paperwork, I found that the license plates had been unlawfully removed from a car and just stuck on the tractor. Basically, it had phony license plates. It had the wrong name of the owner on it. It had someone who doesn't even own the thing anymore. Just happened the owner was driving. He had no logbook. He had no operating authority to even be on this highway. He had no trucking license whatsoever.
A lot of this stuff pretty obvious?
Yes, depending on what it is, like leaf springs or U-bolts, tires, a lot of them are obvious. We also look for nuts and bolts, make sure they're all intact, and that's the obvious stuff.
Some of it kind of scary, what you do see?
Oh yeah, we do see quite a few interesting stuff. Leaf springs are one of the main, gives it away. When you see a broken leaf spring, most of the time you can tell that the vehicle is not maintained properly most of the time. So.
This is the spare tire. It's found hanging in a hanger here, supported by the lower beam, just behind the lift axle. It's a nice tire, but it's held in by gravity. There's a chain that is supposed to be on and hooked around this tire at all times to keep it in place. Someone has failed to put that chain on.
And it could have come out while on the highway.
Definitely. The right set of circumstances, the right bouncing, out it would come, and it would go anywhere. This could cause serious harm to somebody. This is a reinforced air hose. It's an air brake hose. In this particular case, this hose is leading to the spring brake portion of the brake chamber. And as we're sitting here, this is the third axle or the one of the drive axles. This hose is worn through the outer covering into the inner fabric and is wearing through that too. The reinforcement ply has been worn out. This is ready to burst.
Then what would happen?
If this burst, there'd be an instant air loss going to that brake chamber, which would in turn cause that brake chamber to, as they know it, dynamite or come on, and the parking brake would come on at any speed he's going. So these two wheels would stop.
Problem with this truck is it's a tractor trailer and pup loaded with steel. It's overloaded, loads insecure. We've got air leaks, bad tires, and the brakes are completely out of adjustment on the tractor. They're in adjustment on one trailer, but again out of adjustment on the pup. Very dangerous condition. This truck's an accident looking for a place to happen. One of the scary things is here, a lot of these situations just don't have to happen. The drivers are supposed to check their truck thoroughly before they drive it. It's the same throughout North America. They're supposed to check 27 separate items. They're supposed to check it in writing if they're going on a long distance. And just like an airline pilot's supposed to do a pre-flight check. I certainly wouldn't want to fly with any of these guys if they were flying an aircraft.
Feel better that it's been checked anyway.
Yep.
You're off the road?
Yep. It'll be fixed. There's a licensed mechanic on his way up here now to do it. So.
You're still alive?
Yep. But actually, I'm glad to see it. This should have been started a long time ago, and there might have been only half the truck accidents there is. But I can remember when I started driving, altogether a different ball game to what it is now. They got so many laws now that I don't know. I think it's just nerve-wracking really to keep up with the laws and everything like that. But as far as I'm concerned, they should all be checked, along with a lot of cars. I gotta get that dig in.
The driver and the owner. The owner's responsible to instruct the driver to do it. The driver's responsible to do it. The owner's responsible to keep the maintenance up.
Tell us what happened.
Well, nothing. I was going west on Shepherd. I was going back to my job. I've got a load of asphalt. They pulled me over and they said it's a routine check. They gave me a weigh over here. They said my weight's all right, but they checked the whole truck out and found out the power steering belt was loose. So I said, well, you have to hold me just for that? I'm 2 minutes away from my job. Can I at least drop the asphalt, get rid of it, and come back, and you could take the plates off for all I care, as long as I could save this stuff. They said, no. They said, you gotta comply, and they grounded the truck. I called my mechanic, my lifesaver, came over, fixed it up for me. I'm on my way.
Overall, what do you think of it?
Well, it's a little bit strict. I mean, I was 1 minute away from work. It's a little bit ridiculous, but it's safe. I mean, the highways are getting bad. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think they should have a little bit of consideration for things like this. Extenuating circumstances. Stone is not going to go bad. This will. I've got to go.
All right. Good luck.
Yeah.
About 2/3 of the ones we've inspected today have been so unsafe that we can't let them leave. They're placed out of service or grounded. And that means either a mechanic or a tow truck has to come and tow them away or make enough repairs to make them safe. I certainly wouldn't pull in front of a truck. If you have a truck following you too closely, let them by. Remember, 1/3 of these things probably can't stop properly.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the first of Chrysler's so-called cloud cars. This is the all-new Cirrus. Does it have the right stuff to join the rest of Chrysler's very impressive hit parade? We'll have the answer for you at the end of this week's Test Drive.
Chrysler's rash of new product continues with the classy Cirrus. Like the cars it will compete against, it brings a lengthy list of credentials to an already cramped marketplace. Beneath the hood is a new 2.5-litre 24-valve engine that produces 162 horsepower and 165 pounds-feet of torque. Nudge the throttle and the car pulls smoothly and quickly to speed, the run to the 100k mark being accomplished in a tad over 8 seconds. Matched with the engine is an electronically controlled 4-speed automatic transmission that uses adaptive technology. In a nutshell, the transmission learns the driver's mannerisms and then adapts the shift points to suit. This allows the driver to get the best out of the engine.
One of the things that irks me about this car is the fact that the spindle and the caliper mounting bracket haven't been painted. The result, they're already rusted on a car that's got less than 500 kilometers on it. It cheapens a very classy automobile.
The suspension is a fully independent, short, long-arm double wishbone design, complete with roll bars both back and front. The sport version found in the LXI model is on the firm side, similar to that found in most European cars. It delivers good feedback and competent road holding. The only downside is that the taut settings do not like washboard pavement. The whole car moves sideways on you if you push it hard through switchbacks on anything less than smooth pavement. That said, it never reaches a point where the driver becomes apprehensive. Ride comfort is above average given the firm settings. For the most part though, the base touring package is the route to go. It delivers better comfort without sacrificing much in the way of handling. Rounding out this impressive package is the speed-sensitive power-assisted steering. It delivers excellent feel at speed and yet makes parking maneuvers easy. No skid pad test this week. Instead, we're going to use a twisty section of the Cabot Trail. The new independent suspension they've adopted on this vehicle really does handle and corner rather nicely, even under hard acceleration. The tyres on our tester were Michelin's 195/65 MXV4s that feature a compound specifically designed for the Cirrus. While these tyres deliver good grip in the dry, they are skittish in the wet. Suffice it to say, I would change the tyres. Stopping power is supplied by a power-assisted front disc rear drum setup that comes with anti-lock. During the brake test, this system hauled the Cirrus to a halt in 118 feet from 80k. The stops are straight and the pedal easily modulated. If you do a lot of downhill braking, as is required on the Cabot Trail, you do begin to run into some brake fade. The other thing I noticed was that the ABS was a little quick to intervene. This is a combination of a poorly designed algorithm and the choice of tyres. My pet peeve on the Chrysler has to do with a couple of safety items. First of all, the interior mirror sits a little too low down the windshield. When I'm making a left turn, I kept having to duck underneath and peer forward because it effectively blocks your view of what's coming down the road. The second thing, in my view, is inexcusable. You don't have to put your foot on the brake to get the gear lever out of park. That represents a safety hazard to me and one that needs to be addressed. Inside, the Cirrus comes one way, and that is loaded. Standard equipment includes air conditioning, power mirrors, locks, windows, cruise control, and an AM/FM stereo with cassette player. All the controls fall readily to hand and offer a uniform tactile feel. The driving position is good, with the seats providing reasonable comfort. The only part I disliked is the heavy contour in the seat base. After a while, it began to bother my thighs. The cab forward design delivers good rear seat legroom. Headroom, on the other hand, is tight because of the heavy rake of the back glass. Trunk security is an important thing on today's vehicles. Well, Chrysler have addressed that. You can lock the seat in the upright position, and with the flick of a switch, you override the interior release. The other thing they've done, they've added their own personal security alarm, so if you get into trouble, you can call for help. On the safety front, the Cirrus scores big with standard ABS, dual airbags, adjustable upper seatbelt anchors and child-proof rear door locks. Well, that's it for this week's test drive. At the introduction of this vehicle, Chrysler insisted they were after the Japanese competition, namely the Camry, the Accord, the Ultima and Mazda's 626 Kronos. That is very tough competition indeed. However, this car does have the wherewithal to compete. Will it equal the sales record of the Neon and the LH? Only time will tell.
The oldest part of Chrysler's new Cirrus is the emblem. This emblem was first shown at the 1924 New York Auto Show and was designed by none other than Walter P. Chrysler himself. Just a little automotive trivia for you. All right, it's now time to leave the beautiful shores of Cape Breton and head to the best kept garage in this country. That garage, of course, is the home of Bill Gardner.
This week we want to talk about a component found in the engine bay of many of today's front-wheel drive cars, and that's the engine torque strut. We've got a couple of real good examples here today. Both of them show a bit of fatigue, and one has a bit of an interesting twist to it in that we actually use it to reposition the engine. It's more or less our right-hand man during a tune-up. Now, many of today's front-wheel drive cars have their engines transversely mounted, like this Pontiac 6000, and it's the job of the torque strut to control the engine's tendency to roll fore and aft as you apply the torque. Now, keep in mind that these cars in most cases have their engine mounts very low on the engine. It means that there's a lot of mass at the top of the engine that's trying to twist every time you apply the throttle. It's the job of this torque strut to control that movement. There's the original torque strut from this Pontiac 6000, and you can see by its very shape why a lot of people refer to this as the dog bone. You can also see in this particular one that there's a lot of cracking and fatigue on the rubber bushing at the end, and also this steel sleeve that's in the middle, which is supposed to be bonded tight to the rubber, pushes right out. And you can see how the hole has become egg-shaped as well. There's a lot of miles on this part, and it's not uncommon to have to replace one of these things. Now, here's one that somebody has replaced on this 6000, and this is a different kind of design that the aftermarket has come out with. It's a hydraulic damper, a little bit like akin to a shock absorber. And I'm going to suggest to you that if somebody tries to sell you one of these, stay away from it, because we found out that although the idea sounded good, in actual practice these things turned out to be pretty poor. They quickly failed, the oil would drip out, and we found a lot of problems with them. So if you have to replace one of these, replace it with this newer style torque strut or dog bone that the dealer supplies. This is produced by the manufacturer, and you can see that it's a slightly different design. They've increased the size of the end bushings, and they've totally filled it in with rubber at the ends. So this one stands up a little bit better. You can also see the serrations in the center sleeve that keep these strut mounts tight into the bracket when you tighten down the pinch bolt. Okay, we've moved over to the other car we've got here today, which is a 1990 Olds Cutlass. And all GM W-body cars built since '88, which covers this Cutlass, Luminas, Grand Prix, and Regals, all share the same design. They use two torque struts to position the top of the engine. Now, when you're doing a tune-up on a car like this, what you do is remove the bolts that secure the torque strut to the engine. You get this coolant reservoir out of the way so you've got some room at the front of the engine for a tune-up. And what you do is you lever the engine forward several inches, and you position that original mounting bolt into this slave hole. And all you do is just pry the engine ahead a little bit, align that slave hole, and push the bolt through, and that pins the engine forward 2 inches at this point. Now what that does is it gives you about 3 or 4 inches more clearance at the back of the engine, between the engine and the firewall. Now you can get at the back 3 spark plugs on this V6, the lower bolts that fasten the alternator to the engine, and several of the engine sensors. Gives you a lot more room to work on these cars. Makes life a heck of a lot more easy when it comes to tune-up time. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 95.
Chrysler, the smallest of Detroit's big three, is about to reach a Canadian automotive milestone by producing more vehicles than General Motors, the world's biggest automaker.
This year it appears that Chrysler Canada will be the largest vehicle producer in Canada, outproducing both GM and Ford. Traditionally we've been number 3 in the industry. This year it looks like we'll be the largest producer. In fact, our production will probably hit 700,000 units this year for the first time, and we build 3 for every vehicle we sell in Canada, and we're currently accounting for close to 30% of the total industry assembly capacity.
The biggest reason for the decline by General Motors and Ford is downtime at assembly plants for model changeovers and labor disruptions. Last year, Chrysler Canada produced more vehicles than Ford for the first time. There's lots of excitement around Jaguar these days as the company prepares to unveil a new line of XJ sedans for 1995.
The new car takes over from the 1994 car, which has been doing very well in the Canadian marketplace, driven by improved quality, improved feature, and some good marketing programs such as our leasing program, which has been very, very competitive. The new car, the new XJ series, really enhances that position and will create a lot more excitement for us. So I'm predicting in 1995 that we're looking for something like a 30% volume increase year on year.
Watch for the new Jaguar next week on Test Drive.
Our Midas tip of the week is for those of you with standard transmissions in your vehicle. In order to save wear and tear in that expensive clutch system, I suggest that if you're stuck in traffic, sitting at a traffic light, or in a traffic jam, kick the car into neutral and take your foot right off the clutch. That'll save wear and tear on the clutch actuation system, as well as the release bearing and the clutch itself. When the traffic looks like it's about to pick up or the light changes in the other direction, depress the clutch fully, wait a second or two, put the car into first gear, and move away using the least number of engine RPM and getting your foot completely off that clutch as quickly as possible without stalling the engine. That'll save wear and tear in that clutch. And clutch jobs can run you anywhere from $400 to $800. Is not at all uncommon. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzies Corner with Jim Kenzie.
If you walk into a typical car rental agency, you might expect to find a car like this Nissan Sentra, or maybe even that Lincoln over there. But here's a car you probably wouldn't expect to find, a brand new Jaguar. But at selected budget rent-a-car outlets in the United States, you've been able to rent Jaguars on a daily rental basis for the last year. Now, why would Jaguar get into the daily rental business? Well, like any other car company, they don't mind selling a few cars. But they're also interested in this project from a market research point of view. The kind of customer that picks up a car at an airport rental agency isn't the typical kind of customer who often buys a Jaguar. Jaguar was interested in exposing these people to this type of automobile. As well, certain ergonomic characteristics of Jaguars are, shall we say, unique. And Jaguar was interested in learning how first-time drivers got used to these unusual features. That kind of feedback has gone into some of the changes that we've seen in this 1995 model. Now, how have these cars performed in rental service? Well, they had a few electrical problems with the early ones, but the second fleet of 1994 models worked very well, and I know because I rented 5 of them for a tour I ran in California last month. The 1995 models will be going into service again only in the United States in the next few weeks. Well, what about Canada, you say? Can't we get these cars at our budget rental locations? Well, I don't want to jump the gun on this, but I do know that Jaguar is talking to budget, trying to negotiate the proper sort of deal. Who knows, maybe if you can't afford to buy one of these cars, someday you might be able to rent one for a day. And can you imagine a better way to drive to your high school reunion? I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, we wrap up this week's program back on the beautiful coast of Cape Breton. Now, next week, make sure you join us. We'll be on another coast on the other side of this ocean in France to witness the introduction of a new Swedish car. Have I got your curiosity? Well, make sure you join us next week as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them. Motoring 95 is proud to introduce the first in a series of comprehensive test drive videos with an exclusive comparison of the 7 most popular minivans in North America. For your copy of this exclusive comparison video, send check or money order to Motoring 95, P.O. Box 65213, Toronto, Ontario, M4K3Z2, or call 1-800-340-7607. 416 and 905 area codes, call 416-462-1504.
TSN's Motoring 95 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life. And Midas, for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service. Trust your car to Midas.